It's just sort of tough topics today, isn't it? But if you go through a relationship separation, how well equipped are you to deal with the emotional impact of it? I think a lot of people can find themselves in a total state of shock without very much support or very many skills on dealing with their feelings. And that is exactly why an organisation called Dads in Distress exists. You'll hear from them what happens in their meetings and the questions they most frequently get asked next.
Are you ready for the biggest little Bluey countdown on Earth? All day on November 19, we're counting down your favourite 100 Bluey episodes of all time. Go to the ABC Kids website for downloadable decorations and invitations so you can invite your friends to your viewing party.
Turn on the TV, Janet.
The biggest little Bluey countdown, Bluey Best. Starts 6 a.m. on Sunday, November 19 on ABC Kids and streaming on ABC iView.
19 to 7, 18 to 7, ABC Radio Hobart. Parenting children is really hard. Parenting children with someone who thinks you're a terrible person is almost impossible, but so many of us have to do it. Pete Nichols is CEO of Parents Beyond Breakup. Hi, Pete.
Good morning, Rick.
It's like almost harder than being married, co-parenting with someone you're no longer married to. What are the things that men tell you they're experiencing?
Oh gosh, I've been through it myself, so I can tell.
Yeah. Oh, me too. Like I'm in it. Don't you worry. Yeah, we're all here.
Well, look, I mean, the kind of things that the dads that we actually support mums and dads, but it's predominantly dads. I mean, if you open the door and say, "Come along, do you need some help?" It's 9 out of 10 times it's going to be a dad. But look, the issues are common both ways. It's loss of partner, it's loss of access to children, it's loss of home, it's loss of social circle. My standing in society might have been damaged by allegations. It's sometimes it's income. If I'm stressed and I can't work anymore, I can't focus on anything else. It's my loss of purpose. You know, maybe I've lost my identity as a dad or a mum for that matter. As a husband, a father, and those things have a tremendous impact on people. So the questions we get are typically around those things.
And for the dads, like, when you say it's mostly the dads walking through the door, is it because they just have not got the skills to do what they need to do, whereas the mums are like dealing with all the distress, but actually they have been engaged, they've inside the emotional lives of their children, they're across the organisation of the family, and these are pieces often that dads are having to pick up from a bit behind?
Look, I think that it's a complex situation, but
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, typically the kind of roles that mums and dads tradition have been put into, that dad is the breadwinner, he's the provider, the protector, and the mum is the nurturer and the carer of the children. It's still true to a great extent in the society today across Australia, but it's also an expectation. So quite often, even if that's not necessarily true for an individual family, the minute a separation happens, you tend to find that society expects those two people to fall into those two roles. So dad's out the equation. And often that's a default position. If it gets bad enough to get into a courtroom, that's the default position before it might get adjusted, because we look at individual circumstances. So quite often for a dad, it's if he's an involved father and he's being excluded, it's an extremely difficult thing to deal with.
Yeah, it's hugely painful, but sometimes that's as a result of dynamics that are very, very hard to read. So, you know, do you get dads going, like, is this parental alienation, or am I just someone people don't want to be around? Like, what's going on? How do you sort through those sorts of feelings?
Well, that's an interesting question, actually. Look, I mean, generally speaking, there are few things in life that we can do worse to a child than to remove parents that they love, all right? But it does happen. And so even quite often with parents who struggle maybe to be the best parent in the world, it's still not the greatest idea to exclude that parent from a child's life, because it does harm the child. But look, generally speaking, when we work with parents, we actually get them to self-reflect, look at what they're doing, looking at how they're acting, how they're communicating, what it is their expectations of their ex-partner, of the child is. And quite often we work with these guys to kind of normalize, what should I be doing? Where should I be going? What should I be saying? And quite often, within a relatively short space of time, we get them into a good place where they can be a very good, effective parent. But the problem is the system is very slow at catching up with that. So yeah, partly it's the parents themselves, partly it's just very painful when two people are angry at each other, trying to get them past their anger and actually working together for the benefit of the child.
7:15, ABC Radio Hobart, and you're listening to Pete Nichols, CEO of Parents Beyond Breakup, who run a bunch of things called Dads in Distress, which is has weekly meetings in Hobart. And I mean, this is, Pete, it's such a hard conversation to have without making some generalizations.
Yep.
But, let's make some generalizations, and I'm sure everyone at home is smart enough to understand some of these things. Do you feel like one of the key things that men are struggling with is emotional regulation? And because I've had chats with lots of guys and myself as well of going, this is a huge opportunity for you to get across this now and turn up as a person who can manage your emotional world and the emotional world of your children.
Well, look, you're quite right. And look, people react in very different ways, okay? And going through some of those kind of factors that I just touched upon, which is I've just lost my partner, I've just lost my children, I've lost my home or access to my home potentially, maybe even my bank account. It's a rare human who can sit there and go, okay, that doesn't affect me. So people will overreact. They will do crazy things because it's an extreme situation to be put into. It's quite often what we would
Pete,
describe as a perfect storm.
Thank you so much for saying that. Like, this is something that I've observed for myself and with people as well, is just going, look, this is a terrible time. Expecting people to be behaving completely consistently through the whole of that time is a pretty big ask.
Well, slightly losing it, Rick, is probably a rational reaction in an irrational situation. So, yeah. And so I guess what we do is we're peers. So we're dads looking after dads, we're mums looking after mums to help them navigate that journey from an intact family to a non-intact family. And that journey is very bumpy. It can be extremely difficult to manage. And sometimes the only person that can help you through that journey is another mum or dad who's gone through it and who's walked that path and knows how to metaphorically hold your hand and say, it's okay, I hear you, I'm not judging you, I understand why you're acting the way you are, but have you thought about doing this? And so that's effectively how our support works.
So let's say that, I'm in a family situation or a social situation, because often groups of friends, when there's a divorce, everyone just steps back a bit to see how the dust is going to settle.
Yeah.
And the dad just seems to be not like, just being a bit out there, not okay, reactive, hurt. How do you step someone into a kinder place?
Well, actually, that's a really interesting point. I mean, we've got a bit of a problem with men generally around social isolation because men generally aren't if you look at a traditional family, I mean, things change over time, but certain things hold true over time as well. As an organizational psychologist by background, I will say that men generally don't tend to be the ones that look after the social circles within the family. So as soon as a separation occurs, quite often guys will find themselves suddenly on the outside. But, no one likes to be close to someone who's going through hell at the moment. We tend to avoid it. It's uncomfortable to be around. So you typically end up with a bloke who maybe doesn't own the social network within the family once he's on the outside. And then on top of that, people find it uncomfortable. And so, I mean, the way we tend to work with it is if you sat in the room with peers, they're all in exactly the same situation. And that makes an astonishing difference. So the things that we hear most often over the years, we've been around now, it's our 25th year, is that we address their sense of isolation and address their sense of hope. It's like there is hope because I can see other guys further down the journey and they've had great outcomes. And I don't feel isolated. I'm not alone. I'm in a room with 10 other guys who are going through exactly the same thing in my local town right now.
And being reminded that your children do need you, I think, is so important because you can feel that you're just a bit superfluous to the entire operation at times. Pete, if people want to get hold of you, how do they find you?
Well, look, I mean, either we've got a 7-day helpline and we've got a website. So the helpline is 1300 853 437. And the website is PBB, which if my dodgy accent doesn't make it work right, it's Papa Bravo, pbb.org.au.
Brilliant stuff. Really appreciate that talk, Pete. And I mean, there's so much deeper to go. And but you're reaching people. The separated dad, hello, says on the text line, I've separated from my wife over the past year. I'm sorry. It's been tough and we have kids. Something I've tried to maintain is we're still good friends. Both realize we're role models and need to show them that being supportive of each other is the only way to be. And good on you. You're lucky. That's all I can say. What a great position to be in. Pete, thanks so much.
Thank you.
0438 922 936. It's 10 to 7. Now,